Hi, I'm Taylor, product designer with the Editor Extensions team, here with part 2 of the videos on how to make Duo Chat feel more native to the IDE. So this one's going to focus on interactions. See video 1 for details on the problem and appearance breakdown. So the design hypothesis I'm working off of is essentially the IDE's a noisy place where people are working with repetitive workflows, so you're going to see good ROI by really polishing those micro interactions. Okay, so now just to set the baseline for the current behavior, you can see here opening the context menu, searching for a file to add, selecting it, and it's now visible right above the prompt input. Insert a prompt and send it. And in your prompt bubble there, you can see an expandable that shows that it was included as context. Okay, so one way that we could help Duo Chat feel more integrated with the IDE is to really focus in on supporting end-to-end keyboard workflows, which are important for developers. So for example, we might allow the user to start a new chat with one of the hotkeys and then add context as they're writing a prompt using plus. So for example, they type plus, launches our context menu, and perhaps we allow them to even multi-select multiple files using, again, another set of hotkeys. And this allows them to not have to select one file, then open the menu again, add another file, just do it all in one session, and inject those sources as part of the prompt inline when they do it using this keyboard method, just to make it follow a little bit more logically within natural language versus if they use the mouse on the plus sign. Another thing we could do is provide suggestions. I'll touch on this a little bit later, but for example, say they generate some code, maybe we allow them or we generate a code snippet and then we're like, hey, do you want to apply this as a diff? And they can do that quickly using a keyboard shortcut. A lot of a session with an AI chat involves trial and error with your prompts to get an effective response. So what if as you have your cursor in the input field, you can cycle up and down using your keyboard and it jumps right to previous prompts. So this allows you to retry these prompts. It automatically fills into the input field and you can edit them as you like and retry again. Another idea to speed up and be more proactive is similar to code suggestions. Provide suggestions that finish the potential prompt so that they can complete it quicker, but also maybe even suggest context that they might want to include. Again, building on that concept of being proactive, this dual suggestion bar that I touched on before could be used for a lot of different use cases, but essentially just trying to proactively help the user and not be so reactive. So for example, we generate a code snippet, we ask them if they'd like to apply the code and view it as a diff in their editor, or perhaps we even suggest context that might be relevant, or we could even kick off Duo workflow to, for example, say write unit tests for this component you're working on because we have inferred that this is a likely step that would be interesting to you. Just a few ways to try to be more proactive rather than reactive. Building on this, we could also even do commit message suggestions. This could be in the terminal. So for example, we think you're going to write a git commit message. We could do it in the source control part of VS Code, but essentially just trying to really help them out with these repeated workflows and do it in a way that is not noisy or annoying. They can ignore them if they wish, but just building on the same concept and value that code suggestions provides. Managing and verifying that I'm using the correct context sources in my conversation is also an important part of the Duo Chat workflow. So you can see here in the bottom right, a current example, we attach the contact references under a collapsible as part of the prompt that you send. But this is really not the best place for it because we want it to be in a static place so that the user can verify this is what the context that my entire chat has access to, rather than scrolling to a specific prompt location. From here, perhaps we could use a popover and they can just quickly, for example, subtract a piece of context to remove it. This allows them to quickly verify what is being used within the entire conversation because sometimes it can get a bit confusing especially when you have longer conversations. Building on the previous idea is if we supported inline context sources, is perhaps hovering that just allows you to see the path and verify that that is indeed the correct file that you just added. In part 1 video, I mentioned the importance of customization since this is a very personal tool for the developer that they're using every day. So what if we tried to apply that also to workflows and support more adaptable workflows beyond just keyboard and mouse. So for example, voice to text, we could add a button that allows you to record your voice, have that be pre-filled as a prompt, which you could then edit as with the keyboard or just send as is. Maybe we take that even a step further and support verbal responses so that your duo chat's response gets read back to you. This could perhaps allow you to use more of a verbal back and forth conversation like interface. Or perhaps we could even allow actions to be triggered, such as launch a duo workflow to write some unit tests, for example. This is just an idea, but potentially could be useful for some users. As we add multi-thread support, here's one way of how it might look with this kind of terminal-inspired pattern that I've proposed. So I mentioned this in part 1, but when you start a new chat, it could open up a new tab similar to how a terminal window is opened. If these get closed, you can still access your full chat history under, say, a disclosure menu. You can just select whichever chat you want and have it pop back up. So it's always accessible, but it's not cluttering up the interface. It's a secondary menu, and it allows users to continue to use their standard workflow. Let's finish up with an example here. So we've got a fresh new chat open in our window. Let's enter a prompt. We send that prompt, get our response. As you can see, everything is left aligned. We enter a follow-up prompt. Now we decide to attach some context, so we could do this using the keyboard with the plus sign or using the plus button with the mouse. We select our context. In this case, since we use the keyboard, it is shown inline. Let's send that prompt. You then get a response back. We're using a simplified loading indicator as mentioned in part 1. You also have the ability to cancel the prompt using the keyboard, something we don't currently support. So we get a response with a code snippet that's been generated. We have our suggestion bar here, allowing the user to apply this code and view it as a diff, again, using a keyboard shortcut if they wish. So now let's say they want to add a new chat. This doesn't delete the old chat, it simply adds a new one using the terminal pattern of just opening a new window tab here. So you can still toggle back and forth, and this allows users to have multiple tabs open and quickly switch between the two. So they might customize context for 2 different scenarios and then go back and forth between those. Now let's say they go back, they could close that. They can still access all their past chat history through this secondary disclosure menu. As you can see, everything's still available here. So that wraps up this video. See you in part 3.